Good evening. Welcome and thank you for being with us tonight, Thursday, February 1st, for the Napa County Board of Supervisors District 4 Candidate Forum. I'm Sherry Thomas, President of the League of Napa, the League of Women Voters of Napa County. We are providing Spanish translation via the Zoom interpreter capability. If you wish to listen to the Spanish translation, click the globe-like icon, usually at the bottom right of your screen, and check Spanish. Our translator for tonight is Abby Leva. We are recording this forum and it will be posted on YouTube and our League of Women Voters website and social media such as Facebook. Per FCC rules, no other recording of this forum or excerpts from the League of Women Voters recording are allowed. The League of Women Voters is a trusted membership organization that encourages informed and active participation in government, and we are nonpartisan and do not endorse or oppose candidates or political parties. The League does participate in issue advocacy and voter education. If you would like to join us in our work, please visit our website, lwvnapa.com, for membership information and much, much more. The League encourages civil discourse, and the candidates have all agreed to participate under guidelines set for this forum. The candidates have agreed to confine their remarks to their qualifications and issues and not to resort to defamatory remarks about the other candidate. We expect all registrants to also be respectful of all candidates. Microphones and videos are off for everyone except the candidates and the League forum team. Please remember to mute yourself when you are not speaking. Our League's helping team for this forum tonight are our moderator, Nikki Williams, our timekeeper, Linda Diedeker-Yolo, and our translator, Abby Leva. I now turn this over to Nikki.
Thank you, Sherry. Good evening, everyone, and welcome, candidates. This evening, February 1st, 2024, we have with us the two candidates running in the March 5th, 2024 primary election for the position of District 4 Board of Supervisors of Napa County, Manfree and Pete Mott. The League of Women Voters Forum provides an opportunity for our community to learn about the candidates for this position. We will do this by giving each candidate Sorry, I think I got muted there. Hopefully you can hear me again. So the League of Women Voters Forum provides an opportunity for our community to learn about the candidates for this position. We will do this by giving each candidate time for an opening statement. They will then answer as many questions as time allows. And finally, we will finish with each candidate's closing statement. The questions were solicited in advance from the community and members of the League of Women Voters. Our team screened the questions to avoid duplication and to ensure nonpartisanship and civility. The candidates have not seen the questions in advance. If time allows, we may be able to take a few questions from the chat. Each candidate signed an agreement to conduct themselves according to the League of Women Voters rules. They agreed to confine their remarks to their own qualifications without personal comments regarding their opponent. Candidates, please ensure that you can view the timekeeper screen so you keep track of your allotted time, and please keep yourself on mute when you're not answering a question. You will each have 1.5 minutes for your opening statement, 1 minute to answer each question, and then 1.5 minutes each for your closing statement. Our timekeeper will start with a green screen. Then she will flash a yellow screen when you have 30 seconds left. And finally, a red screen when your time is up. I retain the right to mute any candidate who continues to run over their allotted time or violates their signed agreement with us to maintain civil discourse. We also ask participants to keep the chat civil as well. We will start with the candidates' opening statements. The starting order was determined by random selection before the forum. I will rotate the starting order with each question, and the closing statements will be in reverse order from the opening statements. So we will start with Amber's opening statement. You have 1.5 minutes.
Thank you, Nikki, and thanks to all of you for putting this together and for generations of work educating and outreaching to voters. The League of Women Voters does amazing work in our communities to make sure everyone's connected to elections and and has a good idea of what's going on in races like this, where it's not high profile coverage. So thanks a lot, and thanks to everyone who's here listening with us. We can't see you all, but I'm going on faith that you're there. So my name is Amber Manfree, and I am a scientist. My family's been in Napa since about 1900. As a long-term, member of this community, I know that today's decisions will affect us long into the future. And as a scientist, I really have the skills it takes to plan ahead like that, to manage our resources with care while protecting our agricultural heritage. So I'm hoping to work together to build a safe and inclusive community that will provide economic security so that our workers can afford to live here. My top priorities are water security for all of our communities, whether you're on wells or on municipal service, fire resilience in our hillsides and for the betterment of all of our communities, adequate housing and getting the right housing workforce mix so that people don't have to commute so far to get here and we can get a handle on traffic, and transparency and ethics in government. And another big priority for me is good faith stakeholder processes so we can do big projects that allow us to really transform the community and move it forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mott.
Good evening. My name is Peter Mott, and I appreciate being here with you all tonight. I'm running for this office because I think it's important that we maintain both integrity in the office of the Board of Supervisors, that we have experience on that board, and that we have a commitment to our community. And I think I offer that to the citizens of Napa. I've been involved in the community since approximately 30 years ago. For 24 years, continuously, I've served on either a board or a committee or a commission or as an elected here in the Valley. I served 3 terms, 12 years on the Napa City Council, and 2 years before that on the Planning Commission, and have served the last 10 years as a member of a Napa Sanitation Board. My top priorities in this campaign are fire prevention and preparedness. We'll probably talk a bit more about this, but while we're doing a great job working on prevention through funds from the federal government that we've received this last year, we're very grateful for. None of that money can be spent on maintenance, and I'm working to ask the board to adopt a revenue stream of 3% of the general fund towards that maintenance work, so we're not doing work that's just going to go away 3 years later when it grows back over. I'm also committed to improving our roads, traffic, and transportation systems. I believe that our pavement here in the county, while it's improved somewhat, we're still far behind communities around us, and we need to commit those resources, whether it's in-house or through contracting, to rate that pavement condition index to something that's reasonable and should be expected by our populace. I'm also committed to our environment, to the watershed. We're very fortunate. My time's up.
Yep,
Oh,
thank you.
thank
That's your time. We'll start with question 1. And Mr. Mott, you will begin with this one. What do you consider the most important challenges facing Napa County now? How do you address each of these issues? You have 1 minute.
Well, I'm going to address a couple of them. So I'll go back to the fire maintenance discussion I was just had. And again, we've been through 2 devastating wildfires, and I don't think there's anybody here that doesn't recognize the impact, both on people and on property, but also on the economics of our community, literally on citizens that had nothing to do with or been impacted by the fires directly, emotionally impacted from them. We are fortunate to have got this $50 million, $37.5 million, which the county then has to match $13 million to a fund of $50 million to do this mitigation work. But it's ridiculous to do this kind of work without following up with the maintenance work that needs to be done afterwards. And while we may end up with a revenue stream through other processes down the road, we need that work to be done right now as soon as we're doing the mitigation work. So again, I'm asking for funding, dedicated funding for that work. I think the other issue that I'm quite concerned about is the issue with surrounding homelessness, but particularly those who are suffering from mental illness and from substance abuse. And so I'm looking at programs. I'm sorry, it's red. Does that mean I'm up?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Manfree, same question for you. What do you consider the most important challenges facing Napa County now?
So as a scientist who's been working in natural resources for the last 25 years, the flagship problem locally, regionally, and globally is climate change and all of the many impacts that it has. And I'm very well prepared to address those impacts because I understand them at a very deep level. So we see that manifesting in things like fire and things like increased heat stress on workers and even just residents. I've heard from first responders that they're answering more and more calls for heat stroke type situations, and making sure that we get ourselves in a position where we're not just responding, but proactively getting ahead of the changes that's bringing. Another way that's changing our community is with our water supplies. Our storms are shorter and more intense. It's harder to capture them both in reservoirs and in groundwater and then use them slowly over time. So we really need to do work in our environment to make sure that we're getting groundwater infiltration everywhere we possibly can, and to sustain our agriculture and also our communities that depend on groundwater. And for surface reservoirs, I'm very interested in looking at more regional connections that might allow us to buffer drought more successfully, just as examples. The other.
Thank you. That's 1 minute. Thank you. Ms. Manfree, you will get the first chance at question number 2, which is, how do you envision balanced growth in Napa County that serves both local needs and the agriculture and tourist industries needs?
Sure. So my motto is putting locals first. And the reason why is because when I look at how things have developed in our community over the last 40 years or so, we've had this incredible boom in our agricultural and tourism industries, and that's wonderful. But we haven't always made sure that all of those changes benefit the residents. And so for me, decision making is about centering the residents, because if you put them first in your decision making, you're going to end up with outcomes that are very attractive to everyone who visits here. And I really believe that that's the order in which decisions have to be made.
Thank you. Mr. Mott, same question for you. How do you envision balanced growth in Napa County that serves both local needs and the agriculture and tourist industries needs?
Thank you. Well, I think we need to, first of all, get to updating our general plan. That's the most important document within the county. It is the guideline for everything that should happen within the county. And I've been through a general plan update with the city of Napa. It's an extensive effort, and that will, with community and input from individuals and different groups, will give us the guidelines we need to work both through ag development and through housing development. That being said, it can't be an arbitrary plan. We need to know that when we get a plan like this finished with all the effort and all the community input, that is something that folks can rely on. And I don't know that that's always been the case here recently, where they've been able to rely on that guidelines in terms of development. And so that's a challenge, and that's a problem. And I think as we move forward, we need to be cognizant of that fact, that you should be able to look towards the general plan and understand what the rules are.
Thank you. Next question, Mr. Mott will begin first. What are your ideas for reducing fire danger and its impact on the county, and how to balance development in high fire areas and safety for homes in rural forested areas?
Well, I'll go back to, again, this big issue with fire mitigation and maintenance. We've got the money. We've got great teams out there. We've got RCD, and we have the Firewise Council doing, a terrific job out there. We need to have this funding from the general fund to start with. Maybe it comes through a ballot measure down the road of a different way of funding, but we need this funding immediately to start working on the maintenance of this work. And without that, we're just throwing millions of dollars away that we could be utilizing. I do think we need to look closer at developments at the end of rural roads. Certainly any type of winery development or that maybe come forward at the end of rural roads where there high fire danger exists, where it's hard to get people down off the mountain or down out of these areas that are high fire prone areas. We need to take a deep, hard look at those before we allow an applicant to move forward, because we don't want to be putting people at risk. We don't want to put property at risk.
Thank you. Ms. Manfree, same question.
Could you repeat it, please?
Yes. What are your ideas for reducing fire danger and its impact on the county, and how to balance development in high fire areas and safety for homes in rural forested areas?
Okay. So as a rural resident, I've been dealing with fire all my life. My first fire was when I was 4 years old, and I understand fire as a part of this landscape. And every time you develop, you have to keep that in mind. I live in a place that is very ready for fire, both because of the way it's designed and because we're constantly doing work to maintain it. The programs that FireWise and the Fire Safe Councils are running are fantastic. I would absolutely want to keep them going and strengthen them. And we will be getting more money through grants to do home hardening very soon. And I think that's also going to be really positive. But to deal with the kinds of weather events we're seeing with these intense winds and drought conditions, it's going to take more than that to make sure people are safe. So it's going to take good community organizing so that people are connected with each other and with first responders, so that when something happens, there's really good communication. That's a problem right now. I believe, living in a remote area, that we need fire sirens. I'm seeing red. Is that it? Okay, thanks.
Correct. Thank you. Ms. Manfree, question number 4 is yours to begin. What are your top priorities for District 4 specifically?
For District 4 specifically, we absolutely need to be sure that when we're working through the budget that we're allocating enough money to roads. I know that's an issue for city residents as well as rural residents. Fire danger is a really big issue in District 4. A large proportion of the district is rural. And again, as a rural resident, I really understand what that means. So it's well management, dealing with power outages, landslides. There's just all kinds of things that are more intense when you're living out in remote parts of the community, and we really need to work on that. Southern Lake Berryessa is also in the district, and that's a huge issue right now, figuring out what to do in regards to development, what style, where, how much, in this fire-prone landscape where there's also communities that could really benefit from having more access to services and development, and they're very fire impacted out there. So all of those things, and affordable housing too. Those are the top level things for District 4.
Thank you. Mr. Mott, what are your top priorities for District 4 specifically?
Well, first of all, I want to talk about affordable housing and specifically workforce housing. We've had great programs in the past. The proximity housing purchase grants that were available for the county, family farm worker housing grants, and affordable forgivable construction loans for our ADUs, all available from the county within the last few years that had limited funding. We need more funding for these programs. We need to be focused on not only funding for housing for our next generation, which is going to be a challenge, but also for that workforce housing that works in the hospitality sector, that works in the ag sector. Secondly, I want to talk in District 4, a fair bit of it goes along our river trails and our public park. Some of those challenges involve, again, homelessness. One of the homelessness programs that I'm looking at and that I've toured up in Sacramento is called Safe Grounds. Safe Grounds is based on helping those folks that have mental health challenges. And I'm going to get back to this one.
Thank you. Mr. Mott, you're first for question 5. What skills, education, and experience do you bring to the Board of Supervisors position?
Well, again, I have a great deal of experience. I've been involved in every aspect of government, either on the city or on county boards for the past 24 years, including being an elected official, including the Napa Valley Transportation Authority, who deals with roads here, the Traffic Advisory Committee, the Gang and Youth Task Force Committee. I was the joint chair of the Napa County, City-County Affordable Housing Task Force, which went on for 2 years looking for new programs for affordable housing that we've been implementing now. The Waste Management Authority, dealing with our transfer station, and the Airport Authority, dealing with the airport, and the Sanitation District. So all of these together have provided me with just a wealth of knowledge and being able to deal with the issues on the county, again, two years on the Planning Commission. So working with planning, working with general plans, all those issues I'm prepared to do.
Thank you. Ms. Manfree, what skills, education, and experience do you bring to the Board of Supervisors position?
I have a lot of technical skills that will be an excellent complement to the current Board of Supervisors and will expand their capacity to deal with technical documents, especially relating to the environment. I've been in natural resources for 25 years. I have a PhD in geography and have done advanced coursework in hydrology, map making, and ecology, fisheries, all kinds of subjects that have very high relevance to the kinds of decisions that get made. And understanding those technical details, I can't stress enough how important that is when it comes to making decisions, because for a candidate who doesn't, or a supervisor who doesn't have that background, they really have to rely on staff and can't ask the questions that matter most because they just aren't bringing those skills to the table. And I absolutely would. I also have a lot of policy analysis experience, especially spatial policy analysis and how whole landscapes are impacted over long spans of time. So thinking through for something like the general plan, that kind of skill set is very helpful.
Thank you, and we'll stay with you to start with question 6. What will you do to make proceedings more accessible to underrepresented and diverse communities?
For me, there's a number of things that are pretty low-hanging fruit here. One is we can change the times and vary the times when these meetings happen. Right now, they happen during work days and working hours, and it's very hard for people to participate. I think it's great that following COVID, the board has continued to provide meetings accessible through Zoom and recorded to the public as they have for a long time. So I would keep that going. I would be very interested in running town halls and talking to people and bringing them in inclusively and making sure there's good representation on all of the occasions when I would be able to appoint somebody to a board or committee. And I'm also in favor of paying low-income people for their time because their perspectives are really valuable. So just getting them in the door, making sure they understand how the civic process works and that they have the resources they need to really participate meaningfully. All things I would want to do. And I would say multilingual publication, also very important.
Thank you. Mr. Mott, what will you do to make proceedings more accessible to underrepresented and diverse communities?
I think certainly inclusion is the real issue, and whether it comes from who we put on the general plan steering committee as we bring individuals in, we need to be cognizant that we're getting representation from all groups within our community. I've worked very hard to try to encourage members of diverse members of the community into and to run for office. I helped the very first candidate of Latino descent, actually on the Napa City Council, get into office, and the second. And so I think that ability to go out and look for leadership and try to encourage those folks to come along and to learn more about the community, get on commissions, committees, and then run for office is what's going to help us really have that diverse leadership that we need both in the city and the county elected offices.
Thank you. Next question for Mr. Mott. Have you been involved in actions and/or advocacy for social inequities at the county level, such as housing, food insecurity, language access, LGBTQ, or racism?
Well, I've been involved in those issues in terms of within my personal level, within the service groups that I serve on. And so I'm a member of the Napa Sunrise Rotary Club, the Napa Elks Lodge, and also the Native Sons Association. Within those groups, we've worked both to work in the Napa community on programs to assist those within those communities and improve access, improve living conditions, housing conditions. And so it's through that service, which I think is a component of what leadership is to be active and involved in your community, as well as in a leadership position such as on the Board of Supervisors.
Thank you. Ms. Manfree, have you been involved in actions and/or advocacy for social inequities at the county level?
Yeah, as a member of the Groundwater Sustainability Plan Advisory Committee, I advocated to the best of my ability to get more diverse inclusion on that committee. And one of the reasons I'm running is because I'm frustrated that I didn't get a more positive response from the leadership at that time. I'm very interested in connecting and introducing people to one another, and anyone who has worked with me on any issue in the county knows that that's the first thing I do. I just try to bring everybody in the door, and I'm really focused on listening, understanding, and being open to perspectives that are different from my own. I have a very diverse immediate family and have all my life, like since I was a tiny little kid. So I think it comes very naturally to me. And I've had the wonderful fortune of throughout my academic career also being in really wonderfully diverse spaces with people from all over the U.S., people from all over the world, and the power of those collaborations absolutely informs how I work with people who are different from myself.
Thank you. Next question from Ms. Mott, or sorry, from Ms. Manfree. What are your strategies for addressing housing for low-wage workers employed by new development projects such as hotels?
Great question. So housing affordability is obviously a major issue in our community right now. We have added a lot of low-wage jobs without adding the housing that needs to go with it. And what we need to do right now from a high-level view is bring the housing mix into a place where it better meets the jobs mix that we have. So that's going to mean building affordable units. And I'm personally in favor of every time we have the opportunity, building units with the opportunity for the occupants to purchase, because then they can build equity and really get a foothold economically in their lives. I think the Crescent development is a great example of the kind of work we could see. I'm in favor of community land trust models, and we might be looking at one of those at the corner of Trower and Jefferson in the near future. So I would pursue that. Yeah, and just generally partnering with cities to get that work done, because that's how it has to happen, because the growth is going to happen inside cities in our community.
Thank you. Mr. Mott, what are your strategies for addressing housing for low-wage workers employed by new development projects such as hotels?
Well, first we need to work with those around us. You know, I think we agree that we want to protect the ag preserve. I worked very hard when I was on the city council to work with the county. Once the county was allowed to share their arena numbers within the valley, then we set aside had a discussion, I should say, with the county and the city of Napa, where the county agreed that they would not build hotels and that type of stuff in the county, revenue producing entities, and the city agreed to take most of their housing numbers and their affordable numbers. So that's the first step. Again, having served in the city council that long, I still know all the council members and still work closely with them. So that relationship's important. I mentioned we need to refund the work proximity program. We need to refund the ADU grant program. These are programs that work to put people in homes and keep them in homes, not create long-term renters.
Thank you. We'll stay with you, Mr. Mott, for the next question. If you could make one significant change to the way our county government is run, what would it be?
Well, I'm going to go back to to the general plan. And I think, the most important thing here is that we create a document that is so well thought out and have so many groups invested in it that the Board of Supervisors just needs to go to that document and can make decisions based on that without a lot of arbitrary, decisions outside of that. And so I think that's been challenging as of late. I think that's an important issue before the board in terms of how we move forward in the future, both with ag and with housing, with economic development. All those issues are going to be issues that come in front of the board, and we need, or those applicants within all those different entities need to know exactly the kind of rules that they need to follow or to meet to move forward.
Thank you. Ms. Manfree, if you could make one significant change to the way our county government is run, what would it be?
Our community had at one time an incredible capacity for meaningful stakeholder processes. It's what allowed us to complete the flood management project, which absolutely transformed downtown. And I want to see us get back to a place where we can do that kind of transformative work in every policy and every project. And that's going to take an attitude of collaboration and consensus building. I have experience in consensus building in relatively tense situations, and I know what that takes. I know it takes patience. I know it takes a lot of listening and perseverance and very good facilitation, and that in the end, it's always worth it because you're able to make those big gains for your community. So, if we're going to respond to climate change, if we're going to respond to drought, if we're going to respond to fire, the right way to do it is together as a community. And that doesn't just magically happen. It takes a lot of hard work. And so that would be my number one thing, would be bringing a spirit of collaboration to everything I do.
Thank you. We'll start with the next question. Recent police reports indicate rising crime in the county. What would you do to ensure our criminal justice system puts in place measures to protect the safety of our community and intervention strategies for people committing the crimes?
Sorry, who's this for?
Ms. Manfree will start.
Addressing crime in our community, it's obviously very important for everyone to feel safe. And I think for me, the first thing is always understanding where it comes from. Is this something that is happening because people are resource stressed? I mean, most often that's the case. And so building a more equitable community is going to be, maybe more of a long-term way to address that, but certainly you've got to do that deep work to get things back into a place of balance. And I would also be very interested in looking at where these things are happening, because if it's a hot spot, that's easier to address than if it's very diffuse across the county. So I think I need a little bit more information about that to make a really informed opinion. But those are to give you an idea of the way I might look at problem solving. And then obviously funding our first responders, and especially with mental health, creating the mechanisms where when somebody's having a mental health crisis, it's responded to as such and not responded to as a crime. And I know some work is already going in that direction, but I think we can do more.
Thank you. Mr. Mott, what would you do to ensure our criminal justice system puts in place measures to protect the safety of our community and intervention strategies for people committing the crimes?
Well, first, I'd support our law enforcement personnel. I'm endorsed by both the sheriff. As a matter of fact, I met with the sheriff today, and by the Deputy Sheriff's Association. And one of the things we need to be doing is going to Sacramento and writing letters to Sacramento about or supporting our law enforcement personnel. Issues like right to search are coming up in state legislations and are taking away the abilities of our law enforcement personnel to do the work they need to do, and that's going to impact crime in our community. The second thing is to work with, again, the homeless population that's suffering from mental illness and from drug addiction. I'm not necessarily saying they're the ones that are committing crimes. I don't know the statistics, but if we can provide a safety net for these folks, a program where we can give them a place that's safe, that they can be, that will get them off the trails and out of the river areas. That's going to help us long-term in creating a better community for everybody, and both for them and for the citizens of Napa.
Thank you. And Mr. Mott, will stay with you for the next question. What steps do you believe the county needs to take immediately to reduce carbon emissions to meet 2030 goals?
Well, I think what I've been looking at, and one of the most important things I see is has to do with infrastructure. I think our biggest issue remains emissions from vehicles. And as much as people want to think we're all going electric, I think that's going to be a much longer process. And the thing we need to do immediately is working towards getting those areas of such significant backup there that they're adding carbon emissions to the environment. The number one place that I'm focused on is the Jameson Canyon Highway 29 intersection. That project is in its infancy, does not have an EIR. Nothing's been done. The soft school interchange is going to be completed this year, and people are going to speed right on through and stop because that next intersection is going to be backed up for a mile. And so we need to pass the bonding issues with Measure A that I'm hoping are going to be on the November ballot, so that we can get revenue to start moving forward on these infrastructure projects that will help us, again, fight carbon emissions and make for a cleaner Napa Valley. You hit your mute again.
Thank you. Ms. Manfree. What steps do you believe the county needs to take immediately to reduce carbon emissions to meet 2030 goals?
Well, about 30% of our carbon emissions do come from cars. And one of the ways to cut down on that is to build adequate housing so people don't have to commute so far. And then to make our communities more walkable and bikeable so that people don't have to get into cars just to do basic tasks around our communities. I fully support the Napa Bicycle Coalition's work doing that. And I provided all the maps as a consultant for their Safe Routes to Schools project. And I really believe in that work. We need to get ahead of the electric vehicle transition, also especially by making sure to install charging stations at rentals and multi-unit properties where it's harder for people to put in the facilities themselves because the landlord has to be able to do it. So getting the funding in place, getting people connected to the programs is really important. We can also be doing building retrofits, and we should definitely be sure that we're not cutting into our existing carbon stores, which are our wetlands and our trees and our green landscapes. We've got to retain those in order to not make the problem worse.
Thank you. And we'll start with you, Ms. Manfree, for the next question. I think we have time for one more. Are you happy with the current ethical standards and decision-making process of the recent boards of supervisors? Do you support the formation of a county government ethics commission?
I absolutely support the formation of a county ethics commission. It's one of my platform items, and it is because I am deeply saddened by what we've seen going on in our boards for the last, few terms. And I really think we can do better. And more than that, I know from knocking on doors and talking to hundreds and hundreds of wonderful residents that they deserve better. So this is a huge priority for me. I really want to get us on the right track with ethics and governance, and with making sure that we center our residents in our decision making.
Thank you. Mr. Mott, same question for you. Do you support the formation of a county government ethics commission?
Well, I want to research it more first. I'd want to look at other communities our size. I think it's very easy to look at San Francisco or on Oakland, where these ethics commissions exist, and say, oh, that's going to be great for our community. But until we look at other communities that are our size with our type of populace, I think that's the important first step. I also think we need community input about how they feel on this direction. So I'm not against an ethics committee. I think if that makes the most sense, both in terms of looking at other communities and getting input from our citizens, and absolutely we should move forward. I do think it's important to absolutely ask the Board of Supervisors, and frankly anybody in an elected or appointed positions, to rise to that level that the community expects, and to be ethical and be able to represent that as they're in those leadership roles.
Thank you. So I think that takes up most of our time for questions. I want to make sure we give you enough time for your closing statement. Each candidate now has 1.5 minutes for their closing statement. And Mr. Mott, you get to go first.
Thank you. Well, again, I'll state that, you know, I've been involved here in government, again, continuously the last 24 years, and it's been you know, it's been a pleasure, honestly. I enjoy serving this community. I think public service is should be an important part of anybody's life. It's a great way to work with others to be sure that we're all building the kind of community that we want to live in. I have a great deal of experience on all levels of government, as I mentioned, anywhere from gang task force, which we don't even have anymore, to some of the personal issues that I champion, from starting the association in Napa neighborhoods when there was a number of neighborhoods that weren't happy with the access to government. I worked to reestablish the 4th of July parade and fireworks show years ago, because I thought it was ludicrous we didn't have a 4th of July parade, and I worked again through my Rotary Club to do that. I even started an ice rink here, and I knew nothing about ice rinks. I just wanted more things to do for young people and the kids here, and to get them off their cell phones. And so we had a great run with that. And unfortunately, we don't have that here in our community anymore, mostly due to COVID. But these are the issues, as long, in addition to, you know, solutions that I'm bringing forward, and, you know, not just rhetoric in terms of this campaign. You know, I've talked about 3% set aside of, you know, funding for fire and the solutions with our homeless population. I know I'm running out of time, but those are the things I think that the community deserves and is looking for.
Thank you. Ms. Manfree, your closing statement, please.
All right, thanks. Well, thanks everybody for joining us tonight, and make sure to vote. The election is just around the corner. Those ballots will be in your hands probably within a week, because it's all mail-in Napa County. So just to recap, I am bringing an incredible breadth of knowledge and wealth of knowledge to this role. I have a PhD in geography. I have been working in natural resources for a very long time. I'm also a rural resident and really understand what it's like to have to work shoulder to shoulder with neighbors who you might not agree with on some basic things, but you have to all work together because you really are a community. I was raised in that kind of world, and I know exactly what it takes to do that work. I've also been working in sustainable transportation for the past year, and I'm really excited about the transition that we're looking forward to here in the state of California. We have incredible policies in place. And I've also done a lot of state level work on water issues, as well as local work in Napa County on water issues. And so, yeah, so I just want to bring that all forward for the people of Napa County. And again, I really believe that if we focus on our community first, we'll make this a great place for locals and for everyone else. And that's, you know, that's why I'm here. So thanks a lot.
Thank you. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Napa County, I thank the candidates for your time to participate in this forum and for your willingness to serve the Napa community by running for office. And I will now return the forum back to Sherry.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nikki. So if you would like to be involved in the League of Women Voters Napa County, please help make democracy work for everyone. It's easy to join. Just visit our website, lwvnapa.org. And then finally, please, everyone, encourage your family, friends, and neighbors to vote in this election. Every vote counts. And as Ms. Manfree said, the ballot should be in your hands very soon. So we hope everyone will vote, and we look forward to a successful primary. Thank you so much. Thank you, and have a good evening.
Sherry, there's some questions in the chat or in the questions, and it seems like we have time for some questions from the participants.
Let's see. I see one. This gentleman covers numerous community events and writes about them on Facebook blogs, especially those with political and or social impacts on our community. I know
There's the question, can you share your thoughts surrounding school safety and well-being for students?
There are a couple of questions, Linda. I'm going through them. This is one of them. The greatest, sorry, I lost my place. I apologize. Hope to make a positive mark on it. Okay, so I apologize. I kind of lost my place on the question. Oh, here it is. This gentleman would like to know which of you, and he's seen you at some of the events, and could you each comment on your attendance or lack of attendance in such events? I think he's talking about political and social impact events in our community. Sorry, it's not really worded to where it's.
No.
If you don't have a response, that's fine. There is another one. You mentioned several times for Mr. Mott, you mentioned several times about taking 3% from the general fund to deal with fire, but is there a 3% where's the 3% going to come from? And what county programs or services will be impacted by taking the 3% away?
And is this a question to both of us or just a question to me?
It was directed to you, but you should both have a minute to respond.
Okay. So I'm looking at the budget as a whole, and I think I'm not necessarily looking at specific programs to cut on the other side. That's something to be decided by the board. You know, it's not an individual choice about where money comes from one side or the other, but there's definitely discretionary money that within the county budget. There's always budget decisions on any government entity, whether it's the county or the city council or any of the various city councils. Again, I've been through the budget process probably 10 times, maybe 12 times with the city of Napa. We did a 2-year budget and then we did budget updates. So I'm used to that. I've been in business 40 years and spent a great deal of time, again, in my company working on business to make sure that we're profitable, that my employees get good wages. We run a union shop, and so we pay benefits and union Bay Area union wages in my company. So that's something that I'm not looking at myself in terms of saying this is where it's going to come from. It's a program that I think the board as a whole needs to sit down and figure out. If the necessity is there, that's the amount that seems appropriate. Maybe that's a different amount, but that's the amount that seems appropriate to me to get that maintenance work done. And so that's what I'm looking for.
Thank you, Ms. Manfree. And this will be the last question of the evening. Thank you. Oh, you have to unmute. I apologize.
Thank you. So our total county budget is somewhere in the realm of $600 million, and about $125 million of that, give or take, in any given year is general fund. And believe it or not, that goes very quickly because there are so many different programs where this, the need is great and the money is not huge, even relative to other counties nearby. Our general fund is surprisingly small. So it's a really, really hard thing to say you're going to cut the general fund, and you better have a really good idea of what you are going to take away, because right now we're making every dollar work. So there are a lot of conversations going on in the community about how to fund fire maintenance, and some of the things being discussed are property taxes, sales taxes, special districts, and trying to do more matching funding coming in from the state and the feds. So those are all fine and well, but again, I believe this has to be a conversation with the whole community, not just the board, but the whole community, because there's a lot of good ideas out there, and there's a lot of people with really meaningful experience who have a lot to bring to the table in these conversations.
Thank you. And I apologize, we asked that question after your closing statements. There was a question posed. We did have 72 registrants for tonight. So if anyone was curious as to how many folks were open to participating, that is the count. And again, I thank you all for joining us this evening. And again, this will be available on our YouTube channel within a couple of days. And thank you for your time, everyone.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. That was great.